This is the Brian Jonestown.
The year is 1997 and the Brian Jonestown Massacre have just released their 6th studio album, Give It Back. Anton Newcombe, the group's leader, had designed the cover over a bottle of Jack Daniels and some Valium. He had been inspired by Colfax Abbey's Penetrate and wanted to mimic the style. Meanwhile, the Dandy Warhol's second album fails to achieve the numbers Capitol Records hoped for. 9 out of 10 records put out by major labels fail, and they rely on the one that succeeds to make up the numbers. With music video costs and radio promotion costs, just to name a few, Capitol Records begin having serious doubts about the Dandy Warhols. The Dandy's lead singer Courtney Taylor blames Capitol for the poor sales. He cites the reason being them telling the group which singles to release and marketing them as a pop band. At this point, Capitol offer the Brian Jonestown Massacre a modest record deal, but Anton blows the opportunity. At a meeting with a Capitol rep, he turns up high, wearing a fur hat and claiming he's a Freemason. At this time, he carries around a Mason Bible and a ring he displays in any business meetings. His friend had previously bought him the ring at a Salvation Army store. The rep was reportedly so frightened she ducked out when Anton went to the toilet, fearing for her life. Needless to say, they never got the record deal.
I don't need some guy that lives in, which building is it? Capitol? I don't need some square in that round building me pre-packaging a fucking idea for me.
3 days later, a meeting is booked in New York for a possible record deal with TVT. Knowing how unstable he is, the group lie and claim Anton has an ear infection and cannot attend. The band's tambourine player Joel Gion is sent as the band's representative. News of the disastrous meeting with Capitol had yet to reach TVT, and fearing they would sign with Capitol, they agreed on a record deal. By the time Joel arrives back in California, Anton had already cashed the TVT check and bought a bunch of equipment. The equipment's listed as follows: 3 12-string acoustic guitars, Vox guitars, a bunch of old amps, an organ, a sitar, and a Pearl Ludwig drum kit. Anton plans to build the ultimate recording studio. With the rest of the money, he buys a bunch of white outfits and a fur hat.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3.
Anton Alfred Newcombe was quite literally born in the summer of love, August 29th, 1967. Of course, Anton would grow up listening to the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, the Rolling Stones, and by the time he was 9 years old, he began writing songs. As mentioned in the documentary Dig, Anton's father showed symptoms of schizophrenia, drank every day, and left his family. Anton later said his father spent the years following praising him and begging for his forgiveness until his suicide. Like his father, Anton too showed signs of mental health problems and was prescribed Ritalin. Many years later, he would be admitted to a psych ward in Berlin after a mental breakdown, but this part of the story will be explored later on. After forming and playing with several groups, Anton formed the Brian Jonestown Massacre in 1990 at the age of 23. The story of the Brian Jonestown Massacre begins in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury. Living a hippie lifestyle at 359 Haight Street, surrounded by sitars and other exotic instruments, Anton proclaimed he was starting a revolution that would make Andy Warhol look like a picnic. Anton at this point had a good amount of songs written, including the legendary song Stars. Stars had been the first song Anton ever wrote on guitar. It wouldn't appear until the BJM's 5th album, Thank God for Mental Illness. The BJM's early gigs were chaotic and brilliant. Matt Hollywood, the band's guitarist who also wrote songs, worked at a pizzeria, and Joel, the band's tambourine player, worked in a record shop. Their first paying gig took place in 1992 on Brian Jones' birthday. Anton would keep the entire earnings, much to the anger of Matt Hollywood. By this point, Anton had built up a large collection of instruments and recording equipment by purely expressing his desire for it. People would either lend it to him or give it to him, to which he always expressed his gratitude, which further encouraged people to want to give him or lend him more. Though Anton always saw music as his primary job, he did take jobs here and there. During his lunch breaks, he spent the entire time reading. Anton at this point began a relationship with a woman named Dawn Thomas. She was fascinated in his music, his drive, and his ability to get people to do almost anything for him. Anton wrote many songs about their relationship. They would feature on the album Take It From The Man, Their Satanic Majesty's Second Request, and Thank God for Mental Illness. Free and Easy Take 2, Anton wrote during a rainstorm one Christmas after being thrown out of Dawn's house.
Early in the morning, going out walking in the rain, hoping it would cure me of this deep and awful pain.
Their relationship ended in 1997. Anton then began a relationship with a foreign woman named Sophie. She featured in Dig, and within a year they were married. Others later stated their drug addiction tore them apart. It was around this time filming began for the documentary Dig.
You getting that okay? Dig. Bring that back here.
Anton met aspiring filmmaker Andy Timona, who was planning a documentary focusing on 10 bands that were on the verge of being signed. Anton opposed the idea from the start. He believed they should just be filming his band and the Dandy Warhols. Filming for this project would last for 7 years. At this point I won't go through the entire documentary, I'll just hit on key points and carry on after Dig ends. As the film picks up, we see the Brian Jonestown massacre attempt to get a record deal, with a disastrous live performance squashing any chance. Following this, director Andy decides to focus the documentary on just 2 bands, the Brian Jonestown massacre and the Dandy Warhols. At this time the band take part in a VH1 story detailing their turmoil.
We discovered one group teetering on the brink of total emotional meltdown.
A therapy session is held, and at one point Anton leaves the room for 15 minutes to score heroin. When he rejoins the group, he's full of ideas. He insists they all go out to the park for ice cream. The segment ends with the interviewer completely unaware, stating, "You guys seem so different from the beginning of the day." Following this, Anton and girlfriend Sophie travel from San Francisco to Portland to live with Courtney Taylor. After a few days, Courtney can't handle him living there and he moves into a rehearsal space. Joel joins Anton and his now new wife Sophie. Others stated they got married more to do with citizenship more than being man and wife. When the camera crew join them, they find Anton, Joel and Sophie sleeping on the same mattress, broke and hungry. Joel later stated the film portrayed Anton as more volatile to Sophie than he actually was. At this time, guitarist Peter Hayes was auditioned and accepted into the group. The audition was filmed but never used in the final cut. At this time, the Dandy Warhols' second album is rejected by their label Capitol Records, who claim it doesn't have enough hits. They begin to write new songs with a more polished commercial sound. The whole thing is ironic because the reason Capitol Records signed the Dandy Warhols was because they liked their garage rock sound of their first album. By this point, Anton is using heroin heavily. Others around stated that the director of Dig encouraged Anton's reckless behaviour and fed his ego, stating, "You are an artist and the Dandies are not." With the release of the Dandies' new album fast approaching, Courtney is filmed playing Anton their latest single, Not If You Were the Last Junkie on Earth. Anton sits stone-faced, not reacting at all. 2 theories have come out as to why Anton showed such little enthusiasm. One by Courtney, who believes Anton thought the song was documenting his own heroin use, and the second was by Joel, who stated, "I think Anton just thought the song was pure and utter shit." One thing was for sure, Anton at this point saw the Dandies as competitors rather than comrades. A $400,000 video was shot for Not If You Were the Last Junkie on Earth, and the whole event was a 3-day party for the Dandies who barely slept a wink in that time. At this point, director Andy pushes the Dandies to stage a magazine shoot in the BJM's home. Courtney later stated Andy tricked them into doing it. The event begins a feud between the two bands. In retaliation to the Dandies song, Matt Hollywood writes the song Not If You Were the Last Dandy on Earth. Upon hearing this, Courtney threatened to write a song in return about the BJM called You're Not 14, But Your Girlfriends Are. In the following months, the Jonestown embark on a chaotic tour, and feuds between Anton and their manager Dave see them parting ways. Shortly afterwards, the BJM signed with TVT Records. TVT would strongly support the group, even going so far as to pay their rent for a year. At this point, TVT released the single Not If You Were the Last Dandy on Earth. Anton begins work on his next album, Strung Out in Heaven. A fitting title, seeing as he's heavily using heroin and he was going for the most successful period of his life. With his ever-growing drug use, Anton struggles to complete the album. The chorus to the song Wasting Away sums up Anton's self-sabotage. The lyrics read, "You were born to be free, so why are you wasting away? Why are you wasting away?" Matt Hollywood's help is later credited as the reason the album was actually released. Musically, the album was brilliant. Commercially, it was a failure. The opening track, Going to Hell, would later feature in the film American Pie.
Alright, I'm shooting for a 9 o'clock ETA, beer in hand by 5 after. Breath check? Please. Thank you.
One night after coming home from a club, Matt and Anton got into a fight which resulted in Matt leaving the band. Matt can be seen talking about the fight in the Dig documentary. It was during this period Anton claimed he visited Charles Manson in prison and worked out a new version of his song Arkansas.
Far down Arkansas. Back to Arkansas.
Joel would later doubt the validity of this story. A photo shoot takes place not long after, with the band all in white and onlookers confused whether they are a band or a cult. TVT around this time bought Anton Pro Tools, a music producing software popular at the time. In their record contract, it stated TVT could drop the band if Anton was caught using drugs. In 1998, on Anton's 31st birthday, he received the news from his sister of his father's suicide. That day, he jumped off a cliff. Anton didn't react at all. He later stated, "F him, suicide is a selfish act." His father had left a note saying, "Don't tell Anton." At this time, Anton was checked into rehab, only to relapse not long afterwards. TVT offered to put $2,000 towards a car for Anton. He refuses, saying he wants a brand new Range Rover. They retract their offer. Anton then begins work on Strung Out's follow-up album, Bravery, Repetition and Noise. In 1999, TVT released Bringing It All Back Home Again, the BJM's next EP. Matt Hollywood at this time left and would not feature on a BJM record until 2010. At this point, TVT severed their contract obligations with the band. Anton was strung out and record sales were abysmal. TVT saw no future in rock bands and switched to hip-hop. They later went bankrupt in 2008. Now Anton had lost everything due to heroin, he decided to quit the drug. He went cold turkey. Looking emaciated and sick, he wrote the song Open Heart Surgery. While Anton had kicked heroin, he was still by no means sober. His drinking increased. He later stated, "I used alcohol to get out of the opium relationship." At this time, Anton plays live at the knitting factory where he infamously kicked a heckler in the head only to be arrested. What the documentary didn't show, according to someone there that night, was that the heckler went into convulsions. Everyone around him thought he was dying, hence the police being called. Following his arrest, a charity event was held to raise the $30,000 bail money. Anton was released before it took place and the event went on anyway. Side note, this is where the Dig documentary ends. Joel is offered the job of the voice narration throughout Dig. He refuses and hands the task to Courtney Taylor.
Anton was by far the craziest and most talented musician I had ever met. I'm Courtney Taylor from the Dandy Warhols.
At this point, Anton releases the long-awaited follow-up to Strung Out in Heaven, Bravery, Repetition and Noise. The title was Anton's definition of rock and roll. By 2003, Anton was in serious need of cash. He began talking with record label TP, who were as enthusiastic as TVT once were. They agreed on a record deal and TP released And This Is Our Music. The art cover displays a different title, Tomorrow's Heroes Day. At this time, TP arranged for a music video to be shot for the song When Jokers Attack. They hired Charles Mailing, who decided the music video was to be shot at Anton's house with the band playing in his bedroom. They filmed all night from various angles. Unfortunately, Charles was robbed the next day and the footage was forever lost. When Charles woke up to find his equipment gone, he was distraught. He headed to Anton's house, but he was gone. None of the BJM were there. The only person who was in the house was a girl who bore a striking resemblance to Brian Jones from certain angles. He asked the girl if she'd like to be in the music video, to which she agreed. He shot a video of her miming the lyrics to When Jokers Attack and went away pleased that he at least had something. When the BJM saw the music video, they were furious they didn't feature in it. At this point, the documentary Dig was released and Anton was drinking vodka mixed with vitamin water for breakfast. No one believed the release of Dig would affect record sales or audience attendance at gigs. The impact of the documentary skyrocketed them. Anton had hated the documentary. He stated he was shocked and let down by the end result. He felt his career had been reduced to punch-ups and mishaps taken out of context. Guitarist Jeff Davis shared his views. Nevertheless, the film brought them a whole new audience. The band had gotten their biggest publicity push since TVT signed them. Their current label, TP, decided to capitalise on the publicity and release an album. Anton was working on We Are the Radio, but it wouldn't be ready in time. TP decided to release a best-of double album. Tepid Peppermint Wonderland, a retrospective, contained songs from all previous BJM albums, excluding Strung Out in Heaven. TVT had refused to let TP use any of the songs. Capitol must have had the same idea, because at the same time they released the Dandy Warhol's previously rejected album. The record was titled The Black Album. We Are the Radio was finally released 1 year later in 2005, and TP bought Anton an old Mercedes. At this time, Anton gave an interview slating Dig. He stated, "The film tells a story that is not the truth. I was let down. I felt ripped off and cheated. Ultimately, I felt they could have done something important. What a waste." Director, writer and producer Ondi Timona was hurt by Anton's resentment of Dig. She stated, "He lashes out at me all the time. I prefer not to listen to that fake British accent anymore." In contrast, Joel supported the film and was happy to promote it. The Dandy Warhols also benefited from the success of Dig, though both bands distanced themselves from the documentary, never embracing it. Anton at this time had moved to New York on a whim, like he often did. He spent time cooking and watching episodes of The Mighty Boosh. His passion for music translated to cooking. He perfected his recipes, which included vegetarian chili, potato and leek soup, and zucchini bread. By 2008, Anton had decided to move to Europe. He was tired of hangers-on, and he was also living in an illegal sublet. That same year, while touring, Anton was arrested in London for stabbing a member of his band backstage. He went to hospital suffering minor wounds, and Anton was released without charge. A statement by the band was released after, stating it was just horseplay and no knife was involved. The band were at this time scheduled to play on the David Letterman show, but after a backstage scuffle, the booking was cancelled. This year, Anton would form his own record label simply called A. He would distribute his own records for every album thereafter. By 2009, Anton created a YouTube channel and began uploading his music immediately after he finished it. He frequently interacted with fans and still does to this day. At this time, Anton quit drinking cold turkey. He later stated he had to take pills for 3 days to avoid having a seizure. Those around him said he didn't change too much after quitting drinking. The violence was reined back, but the crazy behaviour was ever present. In 2010, Anton released Who Killed Sergeant Pepper. New sound baffled critics and fans alike. The press compared the album to European dance music. In response, Anton stated he didn't want to be grounded by what was popular at the time and explore different beats. After finishing a world tour for the album, Anton was admitted into St. Joseph's psychiatric unit in Berlin. The reason allegedly being a violent schizophrenic episode. He would leave the unit just 2 months later. Through 2011, he continued live streams on his platform Dead TV. One video showed him cooking a stew while recording new material. In 2014, he did an interview with the Guardian newspaper in which he claimed he was still sober and keeps in contact with Courtney Taylor. It is unsure exactly when Anton fell off the wagon, but in 2022, he did an interview with Top Shop Music where he stated before he plays live, his ritual is a vodka with soda water, lemon and limes. In January of 2024, Dig 20 premiered at the Sundance Film Festival with 35 minutes of added footage and extra narration by Joel. The documentary brought the story through to the present day. I for one eagerly await the release on Blu-ray and maybe another resurgence for the Brian Jonestown massacre.